Joe Biden is not necessarily the safe choice that people think he is. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it's dangerous to assume that any candidate is a quote-unquote safe choice, that you pick one candidate and that's just going to deliver an election for you.
Right. He's saying that it was President, my boss, it was his fault.
The guy who is coasting on name recognition can't remember names.
What responsibility do you think that Americans need to take to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear words. If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330 and help me in this fight. Thank you very much. The president thing, my friend from Vermont.
I think if people take a hard look at my voting record, my vision, it's quite different than Joe Biden's is.
But he says he's the most progressive guy in the race. You would concede that?
No, I don't think that Joe is the most progressive candidate in this race.
I know I get criticized. I'm told I get criticized by the New Left. I have the most progressive record of anybody who would run. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time. Somebody has to tell me in here how we're going to do this hard work without dealing with any of those sacred cows. Paul Ryan was correct. When he did the tax code, what's the first thing he decided we had to go after? Social Security and Medicare. Now, we need to do something about Social Security and Medicare. I'm not sorry for anything that I have ever done.
What I'm wondering is, how can young folks trust that you're going to fight for us on climate change when your climate advisor, your hand-picked climate advisor, served on the board of a fossil fuel company?
That is not the person who's doing my advising. And by the way, yeah, Heather worked for us in the administration.
No, I know. But she
look
also
at my
worked.
record.
Yeah.
Look at my record. Just look at the record.
I have President Biden, Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
I've looked at your climate plan. Why doesn't it ban fracking?
Well, why doesn't it ban fracking? Because you can't ban fracking right now. You got to transition away from it. Look, you're going to ban fracking all across America right now, right?
I would love to.
Yeah, I'd love to too. I'd love to make sure we can't use any oil or gas, period, now. Now. Is it possible?
Yes.
Well, you ought to vote for somebody else.
I'm terrified for our future since you reversed it and now taking super PAC money. Since you're now taking super PAC money, how can we trust that you're not fighting for the people profiting off climate change?
Look at my record, child. Look at my record.
Over those 8 years, there were 3 million people that were deported and separated from their families. Yeah. We had this classification of families.
Well, you should vote for Trump.
Families
you should vote for Trump. The younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No. I have no empathy. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. I actually like Dick Cheney, for real. I get on with him. I think he's a decent man. This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards, and there weren't allowed to, there was a 3-meter board. If you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did, and back in those days, you show how things have changed. One of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off. Well, he came off, and he said, I'll meet you outside. My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, I'll be waiting for you. He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There's a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse. the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, what am I going to do? He said, come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, you walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, you may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head. I said, you kidding me? He said, no, if you don't come back. And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. And I walked up to my car. And they had, those days, used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty. And I looked at him, but I was smart then. I said, first of all, I said, when I tell you get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work. He said, you apologize to me? I said, I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said. He said, okay, closed the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again. And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand, and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And I tell you what, the men, they're now all men, the guys I work with down here, and they're all guys at the time. They're all good men. Most of them made an awful lot of themselves. And Earl Larkin had a rough time. And some of you knew Earl. I came back as a public defender.
I'd rather run against, I think, Biden than anybody. I think he's the weakest mentally. And I like running against people that are weak mentally. I think Joe is the weakest up here. The other ones have much more energy. I don't agree with their policies, but I think Joe is a man who is, I call him 1% Joe, because until Obama came along, he didn't do very well.